everyone. I am making this video as a follow-up from the last one because the subject was very interesting and I had a few questions that I want to answer in here. And I was talking with a friend. He is very knowledgeable about the game and we came out with a couple of tips that might help you improve your game. The video is also about defense generals and how to choose them, who to use in which cases and so on. So it is a bit more into an in-depth view of how to do it. And if you watched my last video, I recommended that you should get a small sheet like this one with all the troops that you have in your kit. That is gonna make it a lot easier for you to determine what kind of kit you are, how you are growing, what troops you have, and the amount of troops that you have. For instance, in here you can see that I have a bunch of all types of troops. Okay, and that is important because I need to know how my defense is working. Another thing that you have to consider is where are you doing defense? Are you playing battlefield or not? Are you doing server versus server or not? Or maybe your server is very aggressive, very violent. You maybe are a bob server, so you do a lot of fighting within your server. My server is not that like that. We are sort of a peaceful server and we only do PvP only on weekends. Okay, so I don't worry much about that. Another thing you have to consider again is battlefield. It is extremely important that you do battlefield because in there you are going to be attacked. And don't worry because it is free. You don't have to heal, you don't have to spend anything. Even if you win or lose, you get rewards. So battlefield is very important. In there, you can actually start doing what we call a comprehensive defense. And that means actually seeing in-game, in the reality, how you are actually being attacked. So in my case, for instance, you see that I have some siege. I have a decent amount of siege. And I would think, I am going to be rallied a couple of times with siege before the enemy has access to the rest of my troops. And that is not the case for me because in our alliance, we are also very aggressive. We rally a lot. We hit a lot of players a lot at the beginning of battlefield. And that means that we are starting a lot of siege and range rallies, which means that my siege is normally gone within 10-15 minutes because I am attacking with my siege. So my siege actually in battlefield pretty much never comes into play. I defend with other types of troops. So that is what I mean by comprehensive defense. How are you actually working? Are you taking rallies or not? Maybe you're a trap keep. You are only taking solos and you're jumping from rallies. That is very okay to do. It is a really good strategy to play and gain points, and you will be built differently. In the end, I will talk a little bit about trap keeps because I have a tip for you. So watch until the end of the video. It's very important. So once you've determined how your defense is working, now we can move on to actually deciding the generals. For that purpose, I made another sheet. I love sheets, and in this case, this one is for the defense generals. In this sheet, we don't have information like the march size or the coefficient that I like to make for the PvP generals because march size is not a factor when you're defending. March size only works when you're attacking, when you're sending a march out. So when we defend with all the troops in our kit. All of them are coming into the defense and march size is simply not a factor. That is why it's not here. Another thing is the dragon. It doesn't matter if you need a dragon or not for the defense general because you are going to be putting a dragon there. Regardless of which general you choose, you're going to put a dragon there. And last thing is I separated the troop types in here. Normally there is only one depending on what kind of general that is. For instance, in the mounted sheet, you can see that Roland has stacks in here, and that obviously works for mounted because these generals are for mounted, so one for range and so on, right? But for the defense generals, I need to separate this information because some generals like Shahar and Richard, they work for all kinds of troops. All kinds of troops, and that is really nice to see in here when it's separated because it lets you analyze the information a bit better. Okay, so if you need to pause the video, go ahead and do it. You can see all the generals that I have in here. Most of the free-to-play generals are on top, and I have here The ones with the asterisk are the premium generals. I don't have them all because there are just too many of them, and it doesn't make sense to add generals that we no longer have access to. I put these ones in here just to have something in my sheet. And I have William Marshall in here because William Marshall is a special case. I see that a lot of people are just copy pasting what big players do. And you see big players using William Marshall, and nowadays they use Takenagawa Shigeharu because these are great generals to have. I would love to have Takenawa Shigeharu. I love this general. A bunch of buffs. If you see the total buffs that he has, if you add all these buffs, you get 713% buffs, which is a huge number. I would love to have that. But the question is, do you really have access to a fully ascended general, especially if it's a premium general? Maybe you don't, like myself, and that is the case of William Marshall. It is very, very difficult to ascend William Marshall if you don't have the fragments for that general now. If you didn't get that general in that specific event where the general was the reward, then chances are, even if you are a high spender, even then you're going to have a lot of trouble fully ascending this general. It is really hard to come by. That is why I actually suggest that you take the other generals, especially for us, smaller players, small spenders, and free-to-play players. They should go with generals that are a lot easier to obtain. These ones are in the tavern, super easy to obtain. And if you tell me I am not getting enough copies of Richard the Lionheart, I am having bad luck in the tavern, all I can tell you is you're not having bad luck. What you're doing is you're not visiting the tavern enough. You should be there spending a significant amount of gems in order to find generals. And I haven't been able to prove that there isn't a specific day for a certain general, or that you have to change your culture to maybe Japanese culture if you want Jindiok or so on. I don't have any evidence that suggests that. I've gotten Jindioks while being in European culture, Arabian culture, Chinese culture, all kinds of cultures. I've gotten Jindioks. It is the same thing for Martinus. A lot of people say Martinus is very difficult to obtain. Yes, the chances of getting Martinus are reduced, but you can get him. I have a fully ascended Martinus. If you're not getting enough copies of that general, it's because you're not refreshing enough. You have to come to the tower and spend a significant amount of gems. You cannot spend 20, 30, 50,000 gems and call it bad luck. You need to spend 1,000,000 gems, 2,000,000 gems, and you'll be able to get the generals. Just last week, I got like 8 copies of Richard the Lionheart. And it was all over the week. I was visiting the tavern all the time, and that is how today I was actually able to give Richard 3 red stars. So I'm really tempted to switch to Richard now, but I know I will be visiting the tavern a bit more. I need a few more gems to do it, and I'll be able to get him to 5 red stars. That is why I am very insistent when it comes to getting all the red stars from your general. And I'm gonna show you here why. You have William Marshall here, okay? This is a fully ascended Marshall. This is 5 red stars. And you get, with that you get obviously a bunch of range and siege buffs, and a total of 484% buffs from this general. The thing is, if you reduce Marshall to only 3 red stars, which normally for a PvP general, that would be okay, because PvP generals also have another factor, which is march size. Defense generals, then they don't use that. So having these red stars makes a huge difference. So it gets reduced from 484 to 334% buffs. That is a big reduction. Okay, if you compare with someone else, like Richard the Lionheart, nearly 600% buffs, and you can get this general. It is easy to obtain. You'll get it in the tavern, and you will be able to unlock all these buffs. Unlike Marshall, with 3 red stars, you're getting practically half the buffs. So it is a mediocre general with 3 red stars. With 1 red star, I wouldn't even consider this general, right? So think about that. Another thing is, maybe you're trying to copy paste what other player is doing. Don't do that, because that works for that player, not for you. If I show you my sheet, which is the only thing that I can show you, I don't have your number, so I have to show you mine. Then you can say, okay, this guy's got a wall in here. This guy has some siege and ground and range. So this guy would use this and that general. That makes sense for me, but you really need to understand and try to figure out what makes sense for you. It is imperative that you do it, because only then you'll know which kind of generals you can use. Okay, so here is the sheet. Like I said, you can pause anytime and take a look what you have in here. And in case you wondered, some players also have sort of a mixed defense. That is also a good idea, but what do I mean by mixed defense? You can have two different generals, two entirely separate combos for generals. Like in my case, I would love to have a combo for siege, and after my siege is gone, I would switch to someone else, maybe Richard the Lionheart for all the rest type of troops, or maybe someone for ground, because I am very continuously or it is very regular for me to be rallied with range. So it makes sense for me to give my ground a little bit of a push or improve the buffs on my ground. But is that viable? Can you actually do it? Or are you okay with having two mediocre generals instead of a fully ascended and properly worked on general? I am not, because it is not a good idea to have two sets if they are weak. Just imagine, if you have two sets, you're gonna need two dragons, and that is really difficult to come across in case unless you are spending a lot of money and you're playing all stars and all this stuff. So getting more dragons is really difficult. And how about the choreo gear? Can you get two sets of choreo gear for your two sets of defense generals? Because I cannot. I have four pieces of choreo gear, and I'm struggling to get the last two. It is that difficult to come to get. So for me to get two sets of choreo gear is nearly impossible. It's not going to happen. So I could use a Sith general with mediocre buffs, with a beast instead of a dragon, and with Parthian gear instead of choreo gear. But that means that mid defense is also going to be mediocre. And you can say, go ahead, do it. I do like the idea. Maybe I do want to have a mediocre general and a fully properly built one. That is okay to think about. I prefer to have a really good one because I am limited in the amount of gems that I have, in the amount of rune stones that I have, and the refining stones that I have. And I really don't want to put all that in two sets of defense generals, because I still have to work on my PvP generals. I still need to ascend my sub-city generals. There's a lot of stuff to do in this game. So trying to get it all, and especially copy-paste what big guys do, is really not a good idea, especially for us. We don't have the resources to do it, okay? So try to figure out what a mixed type of defense would be. And what I call a mixed type of defense is just like going into the game, and you can see your wall, and in here you can see that you also use a combination of two generals. So maybe you are a trap keep and you have mounted troops. Great, you are using Boricua up here as your main general. Great, she's got 5 red stars, she's fully specialized and so on, and she's got the proper gear, and you can see Borica, she has choreo gear and so on, right? But down here, you don't have to have another mounted general. You can combine it here. You can put in here someone like Isaac Brock, which I really like. That would be the case if you are built like myself. You have also a lot of ground, and the second thing that I get rallied the most is range. So it makes sense for me to improve my ground, right? So I can go ahead and put Isaac Brock at the wall. And then I would have sort of a mixed defense. A bunch of ground in there and a bunch of mounted as well. You can do something else. You can work with a siege general and also a ground general. Like I said, it is entirely dependent on you, how you are built. So you can mix this, and that is really important to know. Another thing is we always mostly go for defense generals for the world. We go with these generals that say expert in main city defense general. You don't have to do that. What you can do is you can use a different general, Like in this case, let me show you here, you could use Martinez as a defense general. In the previous video, I showed that you really need to read and make sure that this general is working when he's leading the army, not when he's leading the army to attack. Because that means that if you're leading the army to attack, that is only working when you're sending a march out. Okay, when you're reinforcing a player, when you're attacking someone, when you're sending or sending out a camp or so on, right? But if the general works for only leading the army, that means it's also working on defense. So that general can also be used at the wall. Even though it doesn't say that this one is a wall general, this one is actually expert at leading mounted troops. But he can lead them at the wall. You can do that. Okay, that makes it a lot easier for the smaller players that already have a general. Then maybe it's 2, 3, 4 stars and they traded that general for a better PvP general like myself. I traded Martinez for Marco Polo, and now I can put Martinez in the Senate, or I can put it at the wall. It gives you the opportunity to do that. So don't limit yourself thinking that the defense general only has to be a main defense general dedicated to that. You can use other generals. And right now with my friend, we were talking about this general, the one that you can use as an assistant. That is the new general. In this week, we have Stephen II. This general is great. This general also works from the defense, meaning you can put him at the wall. And not only does he have amazing buffs, you get from the main skill, you already are getting 50% attack and also be getting a bunch of defense and HP, 40%, and that is great. But when you use a premium general, especially the latest one, the newest one, you get the Covenant. And like I said, the Covenant is amazing for a defense general, for an assistant one, because it's got a bunch of buffs. So having one of these generals up there in your wall makes a lot of sense because you're getting a lot of buffs from them. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a specific defense general. So think about that. So you can just play around with the generals that you need or that you want, and just trying to find the best combination of these generals for you in order to work better on your defense. If you want me to add a general in here that maybe you're interested in knowing a certain general and you're interested in seeing the stats, I have no problem adding that general to my list and making a video just for you so you can actually take a look and maybe you can pull the trigger and switch that one. Okay, so this is the sheet. Pause if you need to see these generals, and I hope it was helpful for you. And the last thing that I said, it was about trap keeps. If you want to become a trap keep, chances are you have a wall. It doesn't have to be a mounted wall. You can also have a ground wall. I'm seeing a lot of new trap keeps out there with ground. It also works. And the idea is that normally trap keeps have that wall, a little bit of layers like 40, 50,000 of each layer in all troop types, and no top tiers. That is an ideal trap, right? And what these traps do is, let's say this trap has mounted troops, a mounted pyramid of troops. So it is very common for these trap keeps to go ahead and choose Borica, because obviously she is a mounted general and she will help you with mounted buffs. But what you really want to think is, do you really need attack percentage in your mounted wall? I mean, it helps, but it's not really the best or more important thing for your troops, because you can always improve your buffs. You can work on your buffs in the academy, in the military academy. You can increase your building, your training buildings will give you buffs, and you can do research. Like I said, you can improve your champions and so on. There's a lot of ways to improve your buffs, and in case your buffs are low, you can always get more troops. If you're a trap keep and you have 500 million mounted T1, and that is not enough to take solos, you're not coming positive in the power trade when you get hit, you can train more troops, get 750 million. That is not working for you, get a billion troops. You can improve that relatively easy, you know. But one thing that you may want to consider, like I said, maybe don't use someone like Borica. Maybe go with someone else like this guy right here. This is a sub-city general. So not a lot of people think outside the box and say, okay, I only want to be using a defense general at the wall because that's what the game is telling you. But consider this one. Nero is a great general to have at the wall if you're a trap, because you're gonna be debuffing a lot of stuff from the enemy. And debuffs are really hard to come across in the game. There's some research for it. You can work on the champions and work on the debuffs there too. But if you are able to get one of these generals, which is also easy to obtain in the tavern, you get it to 5 red stars and you are getting a bunch of debuffs in here. And that is great to have if you're a trap keep. Again, the specialties are also working, so you got some buffs in here as well. It's not a bad idea to do. There are more debuffs in here, and this allows you to work outside the box. Think outside the box. You're debuffing the troops from the enemy, which is really hard to obtain. And if you need more buffs, just get more troops and work on the buffs in the academy and other stuff. So that is another idea that I wanted to give you. Maybe it works for you if you're a trap keep. Focus on debuffs. That will get you working a lot better when if you're having power exchange that actually are not coming your way. You're losing more than you are winning. So improving your debuffs is a great idea to have. Okay, so I think that is it for this video. Like I said, if you want another general up here, just let me know. I'll be happy to add that general, or if you have any questions, just comment below and I'll just continue the trend. And this subject is quite interesting, so just make sure that you're building according to your needs and your line of thought. Remember to have fun. That is the most important thing in the game. So yep, I'll see you in the game and have fun, and let's keep playing.